All right. Hello, everybody. How are you doing tonight? We are coming live in the Power Hackers series, and I have the illustrious Dr. Jones. Actually, she hasn't done her PhD yet, but I'm just speaking temporally. In the future, she's going to be doing her PhD, and I really want to be able to call her Dr. Jones. So, Dr. Jones, are you here with us tonight?
I am. Thanks for having me.
That is fantastic. I am going to cut ourselves over to the Power Hackers series because, as those of you who've been here before know, this is about some pretty awesome people that I have met in my journeys that they know the code. And in the case of Dr. Jones here, they know a lot about chaos. And so we're going to talk a bit about chaos and how things can break massively. So there's going to be a ton of entropy. For those of you who are upset that I did not actually finish rolling my normal amount of rolling of D20s in the intro, don't worry. All of the entropy will be coming from Ms. Jones. All right, so let's welcome her to the scene. Hello, Nora. Okay, so
Guy.
Here we are. We got that up on the screen. We got some people showing up. No. Lord Azazel. She doesn't. She's never told me she had a PhD. I just heard her name and I heard Dr. Jones in my head and I said it to her. So she always telling me stop that. I think you've gone up to a master's though already, right?
I'm in my graduate program right now, so not quite yet, but soon.
Like a PhD. Graduate
not
okay.
a PhD.
Okay, so it's still too early for that. All right. Well,
still too early. Maybe
I'm hoping everybody in chat, you can all hope with me. So we're gonna hope that we can someday call her Dr. Jones. Ms. Jones, you have a welcome here from the audience. Lord Azazel's welcoming you to the channel. So,
thank you.
And they have some pretty cool emotes as well. So let's start off with, you are currently on location. You're traveling across the country. You're on a mission of mercy. You are just heading. What's going on? You're starting up a company, and that means a lot of movement, right?
Yeah. So separate from that, recently moved out of the Bay Area, so traveling down to Colorado for the next couple months.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Get away from the fires. Kind of a good time to get out of Dodge.
Yeah, exactly. Just the orange sky in SF the other day, kind of.
Now, that's right. You were up in the city, right? You went.
Oh, yeah.
When I met you, you were living mostly in San Francisco and commuting an obscene amount of time south into the Bay to Netflix world headquarters. And
oh yeah.
What is that like every day? I mean, you were doing like 2 hours of commute each way. I mean, that's like 4 hours of commuting.
It was a lot, but Netflix was a really great place to work. I was not ready to live in South Bay, so it was
Oh, and look at that. Last Miles just showed up with a raid. He has raided us with a party of 38 people. Welcome, raiders. This is Ms. Jones. We're doing the Power Hacker series, and good to see all of you here tonight. Thank you, Last Miles, for the raid. That's much appreciated. So I am not going to do any guitar tonight. They're referencing a accidental guitaring that happened on a programming stream, and it's just, this is not that kind of stream.
Have you done karaoke on your stream yet?
We're not going to talk about that. Do we have to talk about that?
We could.
You must be mistaking me with another guy, right? That's a different guy who did the karaoke, isn't it? Are you sure you have? No, it's okay. Last Miles actually just played a clip of it in his channel, so no one's going to believe a word of what I'm saying. Okay, that's hello, Fizzly Bit Twitching. Visibly twitching. I'm actually going to learn how to read. And so welcome. And Emax, he played the Vim clip. Okay, I actually was talking about playing Vim until you die that day. So do you have you're usually in you were working in F# for a while. So you're used to Visual Studio. So it's kind of like, that's a bit of a push on the editor front. In the Vim Emacs wars, you're not going to come down on a side, right?
I'm not, no.
Okay. So
I'm not entering that battle.
All right. Raiders, everybody else, now you know. Dr. Jones is not going to talk about it. HK Cupcake, do not talk about that. So you're actually aware of HK Cupcake and Wubba Dub Dub. Wub Dub Dub is Alex, hacker from Netflix. So you've actually, I think, met him before. But they both knew me in Hong Kong, which is why she's a Hong Kong cupcake. But anyway, yeah, Last Miles is grabbing a drink. All right, let's get on with the interview. No singing, no playing funky music, no editor songs. We're not doing any of that nonsense.
Guy, right. I think I heard you sing Sublime and code in Sublime, though. I feel like some of these are accurate.
Wait a minute, isn't this your interview?
I don't know.
Let's. She's giving all the details away. All right, everybody, don't ask her any questions, okay? Whatever you do tonight, don't ask her any questions. Okay, so Visual Studio. Okay, so Last Miles doesn't approve of Visual Studio.
I also don't approve of Visual Studio.
But you do approve of F Sharp. Now, when I first saw F Sharp, the first thing that hit me when you were talking about it was you were a Fortran programmer. And I understand from that day that was completely wrong, and F Sharp is not a new version of Fortran that's been enhanced with a Sharp by Microsoft. So what is F Sharp? Is that a common language and I just happen to be in a hole for 10 years and like I missed it? Or why do I want to program in that?
It's not a common language. It was developed by Microsoft. It was like their functional answer to a .NET programming language. So I was working at a company called Jet.com back in 2015.
Okay.
They had been around for a couple years before I joined.
But they weren't in the Bay.
They were not in the Bay. This was back when I was living on the East Coast. I was in New York at that time, and they were trying to build an e-commerce website, and they wanted their pricing engine to be really strong. They wanted to do they wanted to do a lot of computations basically very quickly. They wanted to be able to price match folks like Walmart and Amazon and then go a little bit lower.
Okay.
And so
and Fortran's great at that.
They had to be very fast at that regard. But most of their early programmers had only experience in C#. Okay. And so rather than using OCaml, they decided, okay, let's meet them where they are today. Like they'll know the libraries well. And so they chose F#. And yeah, the organization grew a lot. And so every developer that came into the organization had to learn F#, and it ended up being really fun.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, I don't usually describe programming languages as fun, and don't listen to anything that they're saying about regular expressions in the chat. That's just inappropriate conversation. And we even have an emote for that. There's a custom made emoticon that you can give to people.
Expressions?
Yeah, you can actually drop the no regular expression icon. I will gift this to you whenever you're ready to jump on Twitch. So you will have some of the best emotes that are available on Twitch. Oh, and by the way, Dr. Selzam, thank you for the follow. Much appreciated. So that is kind of, but did you actually move out to the West Coast as part of Jet, or was that after?
No, that was after Jet. So while I was at Jet, it was a very fast company in a lot of different ways. So I was the first engineer hired to focus primarily on developer productivity and developer efficiency.
Oh, wow.
Which in F#, it's like, I mean, in the organization, when you're having a programming problem at any organization, you usually Google it to an extent. And F# was so unused that so many times you'd Google something and it would come up with 0 results. And you're just like, I'm just going to reinvent the wheel here. Like, I'm going to try to figure this out the way I would have figured this out in this other language that I know, and I'm going to try to transfer it to this. And so I was the first engineer hired on developer productivity there, which meant like a lot of reinventing the wheel there too. And at that time, we were having a ton of incidents. Like we were moving.
Wait! Don't run past that. What are incidents? Tell me more about that.
It's a good question because it means a different thing in every organization.
Indeed.
But basically, I would call an incident something that causes
Talk about
you
stuff breaking, aren't you?
Yeah, to stop what you're doing at any given time, drop everything, and stop the bleeding. It's like, someone coming into the emergency room from a software perspective.
That's a very strong analogy.
Sorry.
No. I mean, I'm sure you've seen a lot of emergency room code probably doing this developer productivity stuff.
I mean, basically that's what it is. Someone's coming into the emergency room, and it's not like, you just say, take a seat. Like, let's take a second. If something really bad is happening, you address it and you find the doctor that is strong enough to address it. And that's exactly what happens in the software world too. And at jet.com, we were having incidents a lot, like every day. So our marketing team was killing it. You know, there were a lot of folks signing up for the website. People knew about us everywhere, but engineering was really trying to keep up, which was leading to a lot of quick feature releases without a lot of testing and rigor. And so
that's a lot of code going to production with no testing.
Yeah, and it was a new language too. And so there were so many nuances to it. I mean, it really took every engineer about 3 months to ramp up at the company because most folks had not used F# before. At one point, we were like recruiting folks from Australia because there was a big F# community there.
Wow.
And somehow they had convinced them to move to Hoboken, New Jersey. Hoboken is a great place if anyone's from there. I did really like it, but it's very different than Australia, right?
Okay.
So we were doing something pretty cool with F#.
Wait, you put the Australians in Hoboken?
We did, yeah.
Oh my. How did that go?
I mean, they were doing what they loved. They were doing F#, but like, yeah, we were having incidents, and so it was a really interesting time to be in like developer productivity and developer efficiency there, because part of my role was not only to help developers move quickly, but it was to help developers move quickly and safely. Okay. And so that was how I got into chaos engineering, but I had stayed in New Jersey while I was at jet.com. I started looking into a bunch of different things to try to help with Jet's journey. And I made a chaos engineering tool, very simple tool, and I made it in F#. It was just to basically kill nodes. It was a version of Chaos Monkey, and so I'd kill node so that people weren't treating nodes as pets, but they were treating them rather as cattle, as morbid metaphor. But,
okay. Sorry if anybody's a vegetarian here.
Yeah, sorry. I need a better metaphor for that. Okay. Yeah, so I thought I was building a tool. It worked pretty well. Like we found a lot of vulnerabilities, but I also inadvertently took down QA for a week with that tool. And slowly but surely, I realized I wasn't actually just building a tool, but it was instituting a culture change, right? Okay. To get people to think more about the failure modes of their code and their deployments when they were kind of in the development phase. And so it kind of changed the mindset for people to like, not what happens if this fails, but what happens when this fails. And so I blogged a little bit about those experiences. And I based a lot of...
brought you to Casey's attention, I'm guessing.
And that's what brought me to Netflix, and that's what brought me to California, right?
Okay. So we're definitely gonna talk more about that, because that's really where we're going next. But before I do transition off this F# topic, I have to know, you say that you had a bit of working experience with a bunch of Australians in Hoboken. And I can't entirely let that go, because how would an Australian pronounce the word Hoboken?
I don't know, actually. I can't remember.
I have something of a comical
everyone
image.
Used to say Hoboken, no joking, you know, like the Australians would pick that up too.
Okay, so no Australian accent kind of rubbed off. You didn't pick that up around the office?
No.
Okay, it wasn't no reverse cultural immersion kind of happening. Okay, all right. I was going to ask, but that's okay. We're good without accents. So I don't fully understand this image I'm looking at. This is F#. And it's like a happy pipe going to I love, and maybe it's a sideways triangle. What does this mean for our viewers that may not be F# people?
It's the piping function in F#. It's probably the most used. It's the most used in F#, and so the F# community got very creative with their logo. And so,
so piping, you're talking, this is like monad, like the way you're connecting up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to geek out on...
the person that was mentioning functional programming languages earlier.
That Lord Azazel is very interested in functional programming languages, and they brought that up several times to me. And I said, okay, we're going to talk about functional on another stream. But let's let's leave.
It's basically it's nice like you can pass parameters to a function with the pipe, and so it's a cute way of saying
Okay.
I love F
No,
sharp.
that's very cool. Let's get less functional for a moment. Like, I want to sort of tend into the dysfunction world for just a minute.
Okay.
And we're going to get into that journey to the West Coast, but somewhere in this journey, not only did, Jet got acquired, the technology was well loved, and but you had moved on. You had joined Netflix. You were pretty much you were one of the last people to dance at Netflix.
I was. I actually totally forgot about that.
We're gonna bring that up later. Don't you worry, I got that right. No. No, so we're not. No, I would not. But I think that's, you have to pay that price by going to work for the company if you want access to those pictures.
Yeah.
So
I'm in a full inflatable dinosaur costume.
I wasn't gonna tell them.
All right.
Okay. So we're moving back now. At that point, you were in California briefly, and then you were on the other side of the world. You got so into this dysfunction, this sort of like stuff failing kind of mindset that this became sort of the whole world of chaos engineering. And this was about not. I mean, we used to like sort of wear lab coats and have like clipboards and say, okay, we're going to go do computer science with a text editor, whatever we would do. And big O notation and all that kind of, there's formulae, we would pluralize formula as formulae, that was fine back then. But you were watching all of this breaking apart all around you, and you were going, if I'm seeing a system, it's just, I don't know if it's going to break. I mean, like, you would see like the chaos that was hiding behind some of the code. And you thought, like, I want to be around some people. I want to do a degree in that. Is that the mindset, or like how did you make that cognitive leap? Because this is a part that I never understood when I met you in California. You went from writing code and things are sort of ordered and developer productivity to like, let's just look at failure. Let's study failure. Let's study systems breaking apart. Let's kill the cattle. Let's take the nodes and just embrace the fact that software and servers break, and let's learn from it. How did you make that transition to like going to a course from Netflix?
Yeah, I mean, that was about a year and a half into my journey at Netflix that I signed up for that program. And I think even when I started Netflix, if someone told me I would enroll in a graduate program midway through, I would have laughed at them. But sure enough, I did. And it was a pretty interesting story. We were building a really interesting system at Netflix. We had, at Netflix, we were working in Java, right? And so most folks at Netflix were working in Java, and we had developed something that took advantage of the fact that most teams at Netflix use the same set of Java libraries, and we created the ability to inject a random exception or inject time between function calls that they could directly use in whatever services that they wanted to. And so every team automatically had this ability to do chaos engineering at Netflix.
And because they had the ability, everyone suddenly started doing it overnight, right?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay. That's the whole story, of course.
Yeah. So we spent, it was a team, like we were 4 backend developers, and I think all of us were coding like 90% of our time. And we had built this really cool system.
Okay.
We like wrote white papers on it. We were able to run it in production so Netflix had this key business metric called stream starts per second. And that was what Netflix used to monitor if things were going.
Wait. Before we go into the monitoring, stream starts per second for everybody who's here. That's every time you hit play on Netflix, that's a stream start. So we call that a stream start. Doesn't matter if you're playing in the middle of a show or at the beginning of a show or the end, whatever. If post play is not working, if autoplay is happening, all of that counts as a stream start, including videos that show up when you don't want to see them on the homepage, right?
Yep. Yeah.
All of that counts as stream starts.
So that was like the key business metric at Netflix, which was great. Like and going back to what Guy said earlier, what is an incident? I think at a lot of organizations, if you ask someone what is an incident, you'd get a lot of different answers, from like PR to legal to even different engineering teams. I think if you asked anyone at Netflix like what is an incident, they would probably mention SPS. They would probably, and so that was a really cool thing about Netflix culture, is that everyone was aligned around, hey, this metric
matters,
is very important,
okay.
right? And so if it was in the cool thing about Netflix is Netflix traffic is very predictable. So we had that benefit, right? And so we could predict at certain times like where the SPS was supposed to be, where the stream starts per second, where it's supposed to be on a Tuesday at like 11 a.m. or after a soccer game in Europe. And so if they got too high or too low, like that, triggered paging and a potential incident, depending
because
on
we all want to be paged when we're on the weekend chilling out doing our thing. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so, so we developed a platform to do chaos experiments in production, where you could basically create a hypothesis, like I am going to inject failure here, or I'm going to inject latency here between these two calls. So I'll give an example, like if you all think of the bookmark service at Netflix. So the bookmark service.
What does bookmark do? Yeah.
Basically, like if you're watching something on Netflix and you leave to go like make coffee or make dinner or something, and you leave your stream at like, a certain time, like 33:22, it will remember where you left your stream, right? And so
when it works correctly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I seem to have a bad bookmark service, because I've been going through The Next Generation again, and I seem to like keep getting an episode that I played through. So that failure would be like the bookmark service not working.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So they didn't do enough chaos engineering in that team.
Well, so I actually have a really interesting story about this
service,
right? And so everyone that did a chaos experiment at Netflix like would do calls between services, and it was always under the hypothesis of, if I inject failure here, or if I inject latency here, I expect SPS not to change. Like this shouldn't impact our key business metric. And so the idea was like, oh, bookmarks shouldn't be a critical service. Like I don't expect SPS to change, right? Like if I can't access my bookmark, it probably falls back to 0, on the video, right? And so people should still be able to play. So really interesting thing, that is what happened. But in this particular chaos experiment, we saw SPS have an issue. And so we were scratching our heads. We were scratching our heads for so long. And the reason why was not because like it brought Netflix down. It was because when it goes to the beginning of a stream, what are you going to do? You're going to spend a bunch of time searching for where you were actually in that stream. So it did cause SPS to go down.
Wow.
Yeah, it was and it took us a really long time to figure out that was what was happening. And so even though like we had fallback mechanisms and it wasn't necessarily bringing down the site, it was like that failing actually really does impact the user experience. And it seems obvious in hindsight, but it had us learn a lot about, we're actually we might be causing a user an issue here.
And I really like that word you use, that L word, because learn is something that I had never seen outside of Netflix being referred to as something failing. So we would just, and this happened when I first joined Netflix, but they would say, I saw like an entire site go down, like, that was related to like a launch, and they went, okay. And then we sort of like, worked our way through it. And then later on they said, okay, we're going to meet later on for an incident review and we'll take away some learnings from that. And I was like,
right,
that seems very positive. That's a very positive way to look at failure, because usually the question that I always get when something major happens to Netflix, they're like, you must have fired that dude.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the House of Cards 2, like, like we launched it like early by accident, and somebody just changed a date, whatever, and then it got out, right? And so people had just watched the whole thing, and then everyone was asking me at the time, like, okay, so did you like find out who did that and like fire them? I'm like, no. I mean, that's not how we operate. It's
right.
And you were involved in a lot of those learnings and your team would, sort of consult on some of these things and how to inject those failures and sort of write things up. And there's a lot of documentation that goes with that too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we we had spent a lot of time building this tooling. And, in one of the papers we wrote, like we spent a lot of time explaining the algorithm that we developed to prioritize the chaos experiments, to create them for people, to analyze the results. And then at the very end of the paper, it was like, if the title of that section was, if you build it, they might not come. And so we had,
very good.
We had spent a ton of time and energy and like excitement, honestly, building these algorithms and building this platform to do this. And we were the only ones using the tool. It was the four of us mostly using this tool.
Getting a lot of learnings.
We were getting a ton of learnings, but like the mental models of the system, the mental models of how bookmarks worked and how search worked and how playback worked, we were refining our own mental models, which we weren't on service teams at Netflix. We were on a reliability team. And so it would behoove us to transfer those learnings to the reliability or to the service teams that were operating bookmarks, that were operating search, that were operating playback, but they weren't running the experiments. And so we were trying to get them to run them more, which is why I took a lot of time trying to understand why they weren't using the tooling. And a lot of that was because, they had other things going on. It wasn't their main job. And I would watch them from a research perspective, use our tool, and I would watch them stare at the form. And when on the form, we had a box that said, how much SPS do you want to impact? And they'd be like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
None, please.
So do you think that was a UI issue, just the way it was being presented to them?
Well, so we were four backend engineers. We didn't have experience in UI and UX, but it was so important. And through that journey, I'm so adamant about the fact that these backend teams and these infrastructure teams need some sort of designer, need some sort of researcher. But a lot of time as backend and infrastructure developers, we're taught that we can kind of do every role. And when you're impacting production systems and you just give someone a giant form and you say, hey, here's the most important business metric at Netflix, just tell us what number you want to impact, people are going to
I don't want to do that,
back away from their computer.
And you'd have to try to explain to them that no, if we learn something, we can actually build a more reliable service and net positive on this. Was kind of the goal, right? Okay, so there was kind of a difficulty there with human factors, with interface, because humans are a big part of this and the way the code. And so you basically took all this learning and you said, all right, I'm out. I'm going to Sweden. I'm going to go deal with some of the world experts on this, and we're going to write some papers and stuff. And what is that? You were in Sweden and you got to talk about some of these things. You were. What sort of people were there? These were I think you mentioned there were some flight engineers and
it was a pretty wild experience. So I forgot that was the question you originally asked, but
no, it's fine.
There was so much of a human aspect to this, and I even realized that at Jet too. It was I had built a simple tool, but it was really about the culture and the people and how they were using it and how they were thinking about failure. And I think tools can be catalysts to change in a lot of organizations. They can get people thinking in a different way, but they can't teach you how to think. Right. They can't do the thinking for you. And so you can only do so much. And so I felt like I wasn't doing the full extent of my job unless I was getting some of that insight about the people too, and helping them think about failure a little bit differently and integrating some of those learnings into my tool. And so I was speaking at a software conference. I heard John Allspaw talk about this program he was in at Lund University in Sweden. It was a human factors and system safety program. And he was basically stating software has so much to learn from all these other fields that have studied system safety for years longer than software. Software really hasn't been around that long. And, you see some fields like medicine and aviation and all these other fields that have kind of
rockets blowing up.
They've gone through what we've gone through, and they've seen it wrong in a lot of cases. And so his talk just kind of blew my mind. I wanted to go learn more about it. And so I signed up they have a learning lab for a week, and they're like, you don't have to sign up for the full master's program. You can just come for a week. You can learn what it's all about. And I I went with the intention of going for a week, and when I
So
left, I was signed up for a graduate program, but
well done on John
I was
Allspa's
like, I
part.
don't know how this happened, but
That's-
it blew my mind. And I was in the class, it was day one. Everyone went around the room and introduced themselves. There were about 30 people. And so someone was
Oh,
like,
wait, day one. I can cut back to that frame. I had you in front of the schoolhouse here, and I felt
yeah,
bad for the viewers that were one. This is actually the university in Sweden that we're looking
yeah,
at here. So
yeah. So people going around the room, someone was on ground zero for 9/11. Someone was a construction engineer for the tallest building in LA. Someone was in the ER for one of the busiest hospitals in Germany. There were folks all around the world. And then it gets to me, and I'm one of the last people in the room. And I was like, I'm a software engineer at Netflix.
yeah.
And they all, because everyone had told these pretty wild safety stories, and it almost came out like a joke. And so people started laughing. They go, where do you really work? And I was like, that is,
No, yeah.
I'm sorry if that's actually where I really work.
When your episodes stop playing like that,
yeah.
that's me. I'm here.
And so they all kind of left because, one, I was the only person in software in the room, and two,
Okay.
it was Netflix, right? And so they didn't get it. They were like, why would Netflix care about something like this? And I was like, well, software in general needs to care a little bit more about incidents and about safety, because people are using the internet for things we don't even know what they're using them for every day, and they rely on it. And so this mentality of just thinking, hey, it can fail and it's fine if it fails, actually really impacts people's lives. And you think about it at Netflix, we used to make jokes all the time at Netflix, because when Netflix was down, we'd have screenshots of tweets that said, Netflix is down, my life is over. But it really did impact people's lives.
Yeah.
Especially, if you think during the pandemic, oh my gosh, people tuned into
Right.
Netflix more than ever.
Right.
And especially parents, when they're relying on Netflix,
Yeah.
at a certain time of day, working every day. If that's not working, that's going to really throw
Right.
off a family's life. And so I think keeping that in mind and keeping your users in mind actually helps you as a developer. Which
Sure.
is, I think we're evolving as the software industry there, and thinking about failure a little bit more and taking it more seriously.
I completely agree. And that's why we need to be more serious about our chaos engineering, which is, and so shortly after that, you came back to the US, you were doing more Netflix things, you were dealing with people that were not injecting failure with this beautiful tool that you'd built with a team of 4, and you wrote a book.
Yeah, I co-wrote a book with my Netflix colleagues, just about experiences with chaos engineering. We put a lot of human factors and system safety stuff into there too.
I have the actual book booth showing here, I think, with most of the authors that are. I see Aaron.
Yeah, that's all of the authors.
All right, everybody's hanging out, and I actually have a signed copy of this book with all of the authors' autographs. I feel very good about it. I'm not going to show it on stream. It's pristine condition. So, and by the way, there was one thing that kind of came up while you were talking about that was with the aerospace stuff. Les Miles, it turns out, has been dealing a bit with aerospace failure, and he does like to talk about when calculations aren't right, because that was actually the subject of his stream last night.
Oh, that's really cool.
And nom, come on, knock it off. That's cracking. That's not hacking. We're talking about the interesting part of doing clever stuff with software and putting things together. Okay, yeah, the internet was down. We have a newbie. Yes, it is a great book, by the way. I've got this book. You can't have my copy because it's signed, but it is available, I guess, on Amazon. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, the newest book is available on Amazon. The one you're showing on screen here is
they can't get this one.
That one's actually available for free on O'Reilly's website. But we wrote that a couple years ago, and so we wrote a longer one, about 200 pages, with a bunch of contributing authors. Casey Rosenthal and I co-wrote that.
This is Casey here in the middle.
That just came out a couple months ago, so you can buy that on Amazon now. But yeah, it's a number of different. Different folks from various companies, and how they're implementing chaos engineering and how they're thinking about it. So it was really fun.
Okay, so if you wrote a book, now you've written the book on chaos engineering, and you can hit people over the head and say inject failure in your tool because this is the book, and here's my name, so come on and use it. So did you have a little more success as a result of this, or how did that kind of go from there, like at the Netflix community? I mean, were they more? It seemed like the whole world was getting a little more interested in chaos engineering. You had done some public speaking about that, and a bunch of other people had been talking. There's a chaos symposium, I understand, and then it was not cool to call it chaos for a while. I got a little confused there. We have to call it reliability because chaos might be a bad thing. Is that a fair description? Or
yeah, I mean, I think it had an interesting name, but I think the name confused a lot of people because it was about engineering the chaos that was already in your system. It was not about creating chaos. It was also not about chaos theory. I had a lot of people interested in chaos theory contacting me, and I had to tell them that this was not what that was. But it was, it was an interesting experience. I got to speak at reInvent about it, which I think.
Wait. No. We have a shot of that because Nora actually was on. This wasn't just any conversation at reInvent. This is not the right picture. Okay, what did I? Oh, here it is. I have it in the intro. I have your picture here from. This is Nora. You can't really see in this shot. She's standing over here and she's walking over to the podium, doing a keynote at AWS reInvent. Am I describing this picture right? I mean, is this the right?
Yeah. That's what's happening.
So and by the way, you're also getting some mentions here from some of the people in the chat. Brenner Dev just said, I applaud you for having the what if mentality and addressing worst case scenarios. She actually deals with every case scenario, so they don't happen in production. I am an avid proponent of that philosophy. Wow, that's well said, Brenner. Lord Azazel might pirate your book. Let's not discuss piracy as a means. It's free, isn't it? Wait a minute. Why are you pirating?
It's free.
Okay, how do you pirate something that's free?
If you really need a copy, please don't pirate it. I can.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So, and Last Miles likes his buzzwords, and there shouldn't be a presumption that all software is inherently unsafe. Some coding guy. So I have my own opinion on that. All of you here know about my opinion about regular expressions and how little I trust them and how often I've seen them break. But we could talk about that. Last Miles wants a signed copy. That I don't know if we're going to be able to arrange that, Last Miles, but we'll see what we can do. We'll discuss that after the stream. Now, tell me about, this is an insanely large conference stage that you're walking onto. I've never done it. I've never spoken at AWS at the reInvent. Most of Netflix's stack is on AWS. There's a lot on the line. There's 50,000, 100,000 people watching this event. I mean, how does that feel to like have to do a keynote? I mean, this to me is like a scary scene. I mean, I walking onto that stage with that amazing backdrop and like monitors like flying everywhere and everything going on. Like, how does that feel?
It felt awesome. It was a really great experience. So at that year's AWS reInvent, so that was 2017. So it was almost 3 years ago now, but I was doing a longer session where I got into the technical details of what we had built. And that was a 40-minute session. Okay. And then the session that you're showing here was my keynote session, which was about 12 minutes. And so at that point, a lot of the industry had not heard of chaos engineering. So I had to convince everybody of the value
of breaking
12 minutes.
Okay.
That part was really nerve-wracking. Like, if you give me 40 minutes, sure, I could
imagine.
I can do all of it. But
so it's harder to give a short talk than to give a long talk.
Totally. And
totally counterintuitive.
You can see this stage right here. It's like, I enjoy giving talks. I enjoy connecting with folks in the audience and seeing them. But in this talk, I actually couldn't see anybody. The lights were very bright, and so I'm just.
But that's a good thing.
For 12 minutes and trying to convince folks of the business value. But I got a lot of messages afterwards. There were a lot of organizations afterwards that were like, well, we really do need to change our mentalities and philosophies. And so I think we saw a lot of changes to how the industry thought about chaos engineering and beginning to think about it at all after that. And so it's been really awesome to see how the industry's kind of adopted it.
Sure. And I actually just dropped the link to that talk in the chat. People can check that out. I mean, we'll put some more links to some of your other stuff as well. But if you do want to watch that, take a look later. We have the live Nora Jones here, so you can check out the pre-recorded Nora Jones later. And thank you, by the way, for the follows I just missed from F. Wandel, Nishanth, and Dr. Selzam. So thank you very much. And there's a bit of a argument. I'm not going to, now this is not a paid engagement here, but they are offering to pay for signed copies. That's going on right now in the chat. So they, apparently you can handle that business on your own. So, but anyway, apparently there's a lot of demand now for the chaos engineering. How is, yeah, they're just, okay, it's terrible when they have that mindset. Nothing could ever go wrong, because nothing could ever go wrong, right, Nora?
Right.
Okay.
Right, totally. Yeah.
So
it's like, as soon as you hear those words, like, what if this fails? It's like, no, it will fail. Like, how is this going to fail? It's nice to get in, kind of the pre-mortem mindsets, although it is scary to some people. Yeah.
That's before the death of the cattle.
Beyond chaos engineering, it's like,
Okay.
if this software fails, like, how is it going to fail? And giving people an open space to talk about that is actually a lot of fun.
Okay.
And it can honestly ease people before a launch too. It's like, oh, maybe things aren't so bad, or, oh, wow, we actually probably need a couple extra weeks or months on this deadline.
And getting them talking. Actually, you helped co-host an event, that Chaos Symposium. I forgot the name of it, but it was something that some of the previous chaos engineers from Netflix and some people that had some startups going on, and I think you were involved in a couple organizing committees and stuff like that. So, I mean, did you see a lot of chat in the conference scene about chaos engineering over the years after the AWS talk?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I saw it like completely uptick after.
Okay. So every programmer is now trying to bust their own system, is kind of the new world that, and all of you need to break your stuff. Yeah. Okay, so this is a great mode to get into. Oh, and we even have a pro debugger showing up, Marion, who caught 2 of my bugs on yesterday's stream. Maybe 3, I forgot. I tried to forget. And Risky Banana here, who says, my software never fails because I never launch before getting sidetracked by another project. That's also a possible solution, is never to launch code, because only code that's launched will break. So
that's true. If you never write code, it will never fail.
This is literally my GitHub bio coming from Brenner Dev. If you are not intentionally breaking your own software in development, someone else will in production. Or Nora Jones will break it in production with her tool, which actually leads to our final major topic in your hacking journey, which was it wasn't enough just to go on at Netflix, continuing with this whole world of chaos engineering and tool management. I mean, obviously they already had those tools. That case has already been won. Netflix is very interested in destroying itself in order to make itself more resilient. So that to me seems like success. But you went on from there, and now there's something a little more stealth mode, and I don't know how much we're allowed to tell the viewers about it, but is there any detail you can give them about what happened in the post-Netflix era?
Yeah, I mean, well, like, I wasn't on the chaos engineering team the entire time I was at Netflix. I started getting really into learning from Netflix's incidents, but I started looking at Netflix's incidents to help inform the chaos engineering tools. But when I started looking at the incidents, I realized there was so much more data and patterns to them that could help just beyond the chaos engineering tools. Like, it could help things like different aspects of the business. It could help with team allocation and team size. It could help with quarterly planning. It could help with a number of different things just because of the patterns that we could see in the software. Like, Guy, I'll tell you about one of my favorite incidents.
Oh, please.
I don't know if you were there for, but you'll really love this. So it was like, we had a deploy freeze right around the holidays. So the holidays are Netflix's highest traffic time of year.
Netflix very popular
everyone's
gift.
Home, they're not working.
They're hooking up smart TVs.
Right.
It's very high traffic time.
Yeah, and so at that time, we had kind of paused on deploys a little bit, and so what are developers doing during that time? they're piling up a bunch of stuff to deploy later, right? And so they're not exercising those muscles. And so it had been a while since folks deployed something. It was a little bit after that.
And when you don't release early and release often, when you just pile up code, and that means that all of that code is going to be well tested and work perfectly when all of it drops.
Totally. Okay. And they're so excited to release it because they've been working on it for so long, right?
Yep. And they're polishing it, right? They're getting rid of all the faults so that nothing could go wrong when it does launch.
Yeah. And so one developer had released something and they saw an issue with it. And so they decided to turn it off via like a feature flag. And the way they turned it off was they had set the feature flag value to something that was like arbitrarily high.
Can you explain quickly what a feature flag is before we hit that real quick?
Yeah. So it was basically like a numerical value associated with the particular feature that they were developing, just to
because they don't want to launch everything at once, right? They want to be able to kind of like control it while it's in production without doing another code push. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so they were trying to gate it. They were trying to do it without another code push. They found some issues with it, and so they could turn it off safely. But the way they turned it off was they went to this UI where you could type in your feature flag number. And the way they were turning it off was they were like, oh, I'm just going to set this to like an arbitrarily low value. I can't remember all the nuances of this, but
this sounds familiar. I think I do remember this incident.
Yeah, they set it to -3 billion.
I do remember this incident.
Which is more than the max integer more than the min integer that Java can parse. And so it broke everything.
Everything,
right? And it
bad things.
It wasn't this developer's fault. Like I felt so bad for them. Like, and when I went and talked to them, they were like, I can't believe I did this. Like, I should have known. They hadn't been practicing this in a while. And I was like, can you show me where you entered this value? And they were like, you know, you've used this before. You know where. I was like, can you just humor me for a sec? Like, can you just pull it up? And they pull up this UI that I've never seen before.
Oh, wait. Now this is where you change feature values. So stuff that's in prod and you don't normally, like, this is not like part of the push cycle. This is like you pushed your code, everything's deployed, you want to adopt a change of value, and this is the interface you're talking about. But you, who work regularly with this feature stuff, and Chaos and all these other teams, have never seen this interface before.
I had never seen that interface before, and I was like,
this is a secret shadow way of changing features that is unknown to the Chaos team. And
I had been there 2 years at that point, and I was like, they were like, what do you use to do this? And I pull up a completely different UI, and they were like, I've never seen that UI. So
which is very pretty and modern, by the way. It's got like a nice... Sorry.
And so I'm seeing but the one that I was using actually had
safety,
right?
Yeah.
And so what we found out was a lot of developers that had been at the company, like this developer had been at the company a certain number, much longer, did not know about this new UI that was a little bit safer. And the old UI was
I don't think a little bit is a fair description. I think it was like world safer.
World safer. And the old UI was running on one node. Yep. I went and talked to the team that owned it. They were like, oh, wow, people are using that.
Oh, no.
Right. And so it was like, that was just one of the most interesting incidents I've ever experienced. And everything was fine. Like it all was an okay, like, situation. It wasn't like customers
which means only a few million users had incidents.
No. It was really like, it was like a very few situation.
Okay.
But it was just so many nuances to that particular developer. If I hadn't gone and talked to them, they would have just taken the blame for the entire thing. Like, oh, I was being silly. And they really weren't. Like, they were, they hadn't exercised that muscle in a while. They didn't know about the new UI. So it was like a communication breakdown,
Yeah.
And so it spawned a lot of really necessary conversations in the organization.
And that, if I remember correctly, I think that was around the same time that the Hawaii guy got in trouble for the
Yes, it
missile
was.
command.
It
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know that, I don't remember all the details of that, but it was basically he had like the password on his computer, and I don't remember the specifics, but it was like this crazy UI that if you pressed the wrong button, it like alerted all of Hawaii, and that
Yeah.
there was like an
And
attack or something.
I felt so bad for that person because he didn't get fired, but he got moved on to another team, and it was like we've had problems with this guy before kind of mentality. But like when you looked at the UI he was looking at, it was like
Yeah.
missile in test or missile in production, and they were like right next to each other. They were the exact same color. They were the exact same font. But like when Hawaii is reporting this, they're like, oh, we really gotta blame.
Yeah. And I think I remember that mainly because
right.
when you talked about this incident, the UI that developer was using looked like that. Like it was one of those, like it went out of its way. I mean, it was an early developer tool from the early days of Netflix going the cloud. But it was one of those cases where like doing the right thing was hard.
Exactly. And this is why back-end teams and reliability teams need more than back-end engineers. They need like product managers, they need designers,
Right.
because these like ultimately these can lead to really big incidents, but a lot of times companies don't invest in hiring like differing skill sets for those
Sure.
types of teams. They just throw a bunch of back-end engineers on the team.
Right. And now chat, by the way, is sharing. Please don't share pictures of all of your screens with sticky notes and passwords posted on them. So we're not gonna get into that. You can keep that, but if you want to give me your mother's maiden name and your social security. Okay. Anyway, so moving on, we're gonna that led to, you said that there's business in this. I mean, it wasn't.
So that led to a lot of like business realizations for Netflix, right? And so after that, I had spent like the last 6 or 7 months at Netflix really analyzing incidents, finding patterns behind them, helping teams learn from them, helping use that information to direct attention in organizations. And it was a lot of powerful work, but it was a lot of like manual work. There wasn't a lot of tooling around it. Slack had been contacting me because they were about to IPO and they wanted to, bring some of this Netflix mentality over to Slack in terms of chaos engineering, in terms of incident analysis. And so I went there for a little bit and I was doing some incident analysis
You were at
around
Slack.
the incidents. I was at Slack for a little bit.
So when Slack kept breaking over and over again, you're like, you're just feeding my degree here. Like this is
basically, I mean, it was like around the time they IPO'd too. So it was a very interesting time to be there. But at that point I was like, there is such a need for better incident analysis tooling to help businesses a little bit more, to like help them understand their incidents can be used like for opportunities to help them direct attention in their business, to help them understand their financials
rather than frying
better.
individuals and trying to.
Exactly, rather than firing people, but actually understand like how some of this stuff is happening. And so I stayed there for about 6 months, and at that point I was kind of itching to go start my own company around some of this. Like I saw a big need for this, and so
Which you
we're
did.
still I did, yeah. So we're still in build mode right now. I've been working on it for about a year.
Are you at the secret campus right now? Is that why we don't know your location?
The secret campus, right?
Okay.
We're still in build mode right now, but we're basically building tooling to help companies understand some of these opportunities a little bit better, to help them direct their attention. So
that is fantastic. Are we allowed to share that webpage or not yet?
Go for it. Go for it.
So I wasn't really sure what. So they're still a little bit early. There's not too much description on this yet, but this is the story. This is, if you want to tell your full story, uncover your full potential, then this is the jelly.io page, and I'm just going to drop that link in the chat. This is where Nora is currently getting things set up. They're in build mode right now, and I don't know, looking around, doing venture routes. I mean, that's like an insane amount of work to start up this type of enterprise, and then try to explain that chaos or injecting all this tooling around human factors is important for a company to adopt, and not if they don't want the pieces all over the place of their product.
Absolutely.
But they think, oh, don't break my thing, right? I mean, so is that a difficult like position to be in, talking to the business clientele? I mean, or are they more receptive?
we're trying to meet people where they are today. Like
Okay.
people know they have incidents today. They want to
Okay.
do better at them. We're not trying to change things for them. We're trying to give them a boost.
Okay.
And so I'll if you sign up on the site, like you can stay updated. I'll share a little bit more once we are out of this build mode, and like I can talk about the product and stuff. But yeah, I'm not trying to change people's mindsets. I'm just trying to make them give them different insights into their incidents than they're seeing right now.
Sure. Oh, that makes sense. And insights are a very important part of understanding when things are wrong, right? I mean, that's all about the visibility of what's actually going on in your system, not what you think it's going to do. And by the way, thank you for the follow, Risky Banana. I appreciate that. So in closing, there's one question that I usually want to ask most of the people that are on the Power Hacker series. And that is, if you could give a little bit of advice, like one tool or technique or book, and I know they want to buy $100 signed copies of your chaos engineering book, that you could give to them knowledge wise, what would that be that would help them on their journey to, the bright side of hacking, the bright side of understanding complex systems, insights, and knowing?
I think your second point is so important for developers. I wish, I studied computer engineering in school. And so I had a little bit of background in understanding complex systems, but there's not a lot of dedication to understanding system failure, even in engineering degrees. Like we don't get taught a lot about that. And so, there's a really great book that was the first book I read in my program. It's called The Field Guide to Understanding Human Error by Sidney Dekker. And he was a pilot, and he talks a lot about system failures and how we think about them. And all of it is directly relevant to software. You could literally just find and replace all the words aviation and change it to software, and it would read exactly the same. And so that book supplemented, with like designing data intensive applications and the Pragmatic Programmer, I think are like great books. Yep. Yeah, I think are great books for the programmer's tool chest, but like a lot of folks don't know about the Field Guide to Understanding Human Error. But I think as developers, like you get a leg up if you start understanding the human piece of the equation rather than just the code.
Interesting. And I do want to apologize to Risky Banana. That was not a follow, that was a sub. I'm sorry, I missed that. So thank you even more. You have some of the best programming emotes, including the no regex emote, which how many incidents did we see? I mean, just ballpark that might be related to regular expressions. Is that,
it's too many.
It's too many incidents. People in this channel are always asking me why I'm so anti-regex, and I try to explain to them that it's not the regular expression itself. It's the fact that it's a super dense piece of code and it's very unreadable, and no one takes the time.
The person that wrote it understands it,
and even they don't understand it. Like a day later,
you go get blame, and it's like someone wrote it like 12 years ago. That's not even at the company anymore, and you're like, what am I supposed to do with this?
And this is real. This took out Netflix a number of times that I recall, but I have seen outage reports from Cloudflare, from Google, from everyone has had a major, everything went down because of a regular expression. Anyway, I know that might not be in your book. I mean, I'll write that chapter next book. And actually you have another book. You just came out with another book, right?
Yeah, that was you talked about that earlier.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. That was the second one. Okay, that's my bad.
Yep.
I had the signed copy. Right. That was my early one. Okay, that's super great. Any other parting words you have for chat here? Sounds like after they're done posting their passwords from their stickies on their monitors, anything else you want to tell them? This is, by the way, Nora Jones' first appearance on Twitch, I believe.
It is, yeah.
So anything you want to tell them before I tell them that we're sort of done with what we're doing?
No, thank you for having me, and thanks for the questions.
Oh, it's been a real pleasure to have you here, and Last Miles is very adamant to talk about a signed copy for $100. I think that Last Miles, that might cost $100 just to ship it to Canada, as far as I can tell. I don't know what's happened to the border, but for those of you who want to harass me about those books, feel free to join the Discord, and please don't bother Nora Jones on her email sign-up page about that, but that also is a hacking technique. You can come on the Discord and chat. Nora is not on the Discord yet. but maybe we can talk her into joining our Discord community as well after she's done a Power Hacker series. So,
I did want to mention one other thing.
Sure.
We have a website called learningfromincidents.io
Learning.
where folks all over the software industry kind of open source their learnings from their incidents and how they're improving and learning from them. So it's a fun site to go check out.
So if I understand this correctly, you really love the Indian Ocean. Is that right?
What?
I mean, IO, right, is Indian Ocean, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So do I have this right? Learning from incidents?
Learning from incidents.
From incidents.com. Okay. That does not look like the right thing. Learning.
There you go.
That is the right thing?
That's not it either.
Okay.
I will post it in the chat.
Okay. Well, yep. Drop that in the chat for all of them. And I do very much want to thank you for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure to have you. And thank you, everybody, for giving Nora such a warm reception and generally being a great audience. So that is, this is episode 3 of the Power Hacker series. Come join Discord. These happen on Wednesdays in general. Maybe we'll get Nora back someday. She was originally going to host my charity run, which we haven't talked about yet, but that may be happening again.
That's awesome.
Ms. Jones.
That's
but
awesome.
I know you're super busy with startup mode, so I won't bother you about that this year. But and it was super fun when we got to work like a cube or two apart in Los Gatos. So I do miss those days.
That was a lot of fun. I miss it too.
But anyway, thank you so much for coming on the show. And thank you, everybody, for being here and being a great audience. So we'll see you later. And next up is going to be Saturday is the launch party. Nora, you can inject some chaos into this, but I'm actually about to launch a original Nintendo game on Saturday.
Cool.
And people that are going to be coming to the launch party can cash their channel points in to be able to get their own personalized copy burned into the NES ROM. So that will be happening on Saturday. So everybody drop by on Saturday. I'll talk more about the details of that in the Discord. But Nora, thank you so much. It's been great.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you, everyone. Take care.